Welcome to episode 12 in our second series on the Surnames of Appalachia and the Antebellum South. As with the first season, I want to focus on surnames that have been in the country since before the Civil War. As a reminder, the Industrial Revolution in America began in earnest during the Civil War and lasted through the Reconstruction and on up to around 1890 or so. That would take us from 1861 to almost the turn of the century, almost to, well, let's say 1890, the Sherman Antitrust Act. The economic explosion that resulted from the expansion of factories and the construction of railroads attracted millions of people to the United States. And since a person my age would most likely know the names of great-grandparents or double-great-grandparents who arrived in an American port of entry during that time, there's little need for my work to help them. So today on the Vanntage Point, we're going to move back a couple centuries to see the origins and meanings of 6 more pre-Civil War family names of Appalachia and the Antebellum South. Now, to get a copy of the Surname Catalog that lists the names and their respective episodes, write to me at vantagepoint22@gmail.com and I'll send you the list as a PDF file. Now, I want to give a shout out to my cousin Bruce and his wife Debbie Voiles. They live down in Chattanooga, and it was Bruce who inspired me in some respects as a kid to think about family history. So, greetings. Hello there, cousin. Now, I hope you'll join me today. Number 1, Britton. Britton or Britton? Well, one must ask the obvious question. Is Britton and Britton the same name? Well, let's do a little bit of digging to find out. What's hard to believe for some folks is that Britton is not an Anglo-Saxon name. I know I was surprised. I thought for sure that the Germans from the Angles and the Saxons had named it, but no, that's not the case. Even the Romans were calling them the Britons. All these forms of Britton came from the Brythonic wing of the Celtic language branch of the Indo-European language family. Be a test over this at the end of the show. Just kidding, of course. Over time, Britton was applied to a dweller of Brittany in France, and Britain with the O was applied to a dweller of Great Britain, the island on which England, Wales, and Scotland sit. Now, you might note that the personal name Britton appears early in Irish history. For those of you who are looking for a connection to the Antebellum South, Britton's membership card is punched for sure. I mean, it's been here for a while. The South Carolina Historical Society has a collection called The History of the Britton Family from 1733 to 1899. The Wilson Special Collections Library at the University of North Carolina houses the Britton Moore family papers from 1782 to 1890. Benjamin Britton was one of the earliest members of the family to be born in the South. He was born in the South, specifically South Carolina, around 1770. At the end of the day, this Celtic name could have come from England, France, Ireland, or Scotland. So check your paper trail to locate the origin of your line of Britton. Number 2, Brazil. As with the name Britton, one must ask, is Brazil the same name as Brazil? What are we waiting for? Let's find out. Well, in the UK it seems that all these forms derive from Irish name Brassel, which is now commonly but not exclusively spelled like the country name Brazil. It's interesting that Henry Harrison says that the surname derives from the Celtic languages and could mean mighty or prince. McClassic provides its Irish Gaelic spelling, but he speculates that its original meaning was strife. Looking closer to home, does the surname Brazil qualify as the Antebellum family name? It does indeed. According to family historian Walter West Folger, Henry Brazil lived in Charles City County, Virginia, between 1643 and 1720. Wow, that's way back there. His descendants now live in Virginia, South Carolina, and across the South. At the end of the day, I'm confident that Brazil line, your Brazil line, if your family lived in the Antebellum South, is not of Portuguese origin. After all, that's what they speak in Brazil. It's Portuguese. It's Irish. Number 3, Favre or Favre. Being an NFL football fan, I just knew that this surname was an Americanized form of Favre. Yes. As with Brazil and Britain, we must ask if Favre and Favre have the same original meanings, same origins. Now, unless you were born and raised in an off-world colony, you would have heard of Brett Lorenzo Favre. Brett Lorenzo Favre. The name is so sweet, you gotta say it twice. And I'm starting to sound like John Madden. He was a big-time Brett Favre fan in the NFL. Frank Caliendo would talk about him quite a bit. Now, he was born, that is, Brett was born in Gulfport, Mississippi, and played quarterback for Southern Miss, but his claim to fame was ensured by setting several records as an NFL quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, and then he finished up with the, well, I think he played with the Jets for a little bit, then he finished up with the Vikings. He's retired now and resides near Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and as far as I can determine, members of his family, the Favre family, have lived in the South since the days of Jean-Claude Favre of Mobile, Alabama. He was possibly one of the first landowners in Mississippi. He was granted land in 1767 by the British government for military service in western Florida. Now, with respect to Brett's surname, does it share a source with Favre? Yes. They derive from Lefebvre, a French blacksmith. But there's a form of favor in England that originated as grace or goodwill, as in, you found favor with the king. I wasn't able to find it among the traditional surnames of Ireland or Scotland, or Wales for that matter. So at the end of the day, I'm confident that this Anglo-French name came from either England or France. Number 4, Llewellyn. I was happy to get this request because there are so few inquiries about Welsh surnames. Now, DNA-wise, I'm 7% Welsh, 7% Irish, so I have a personal interest in getting these names as correct as I possibly can. But in the past, I received some pretty hateful comments from people who claim to be Welsh. Their criticisms rest on my lack of knowledge of how to pronounce Welsh words, and the same thing's true with Gaelic words. So, I don't attempt to pronounce them anymore. I just show the spelling and let you do the pronouncing. Harrison says that Llew was a Welsh personal name that morphed into a surname for one who was a leader or had lion-like characteristics. American history tells us that Welsh immigrants were attracted to Appalachia by mining activities, especially during the Industrial Revolution of the late 1800s. But our Llewellyn families go much further back into American history. Records show that Llewellyn folk were in the South over 100 years before the Industrial Revolution and hundreds of miles from the location of coal mines. For example, John William Llewellyn was born in Norfolk County, Virginia in 1730. He married a lady named Mary Elizabeth Ball, that's B-A-H-L, and relocated to Martin County, North Carolina, where he died in 1794. That was the year that Dennis Van, my triple great-grandfather, was born. At the end of the day, I couldn't find Llewellyn among the traditional surnames of Ireland or Scotland, so I'm confident that your line will lead back to Wales, possibly England for a short stay. Number 5, Hatcher. I must admit that I've only known a couple of people named Hatcher in my lifetime. I always assumed that the name was given to someone who hatched and raised chickens, but that's far from the truth. It's a name introduced into the Isles by the French-speaking Normans in 1066 or shortly thereafter. It was given to a dweller by a hatchgate, or as in a gatekeeper. It was also given to a person who fought with a hatchet. Now that'd be one way to get up close and personal with an enemy or a victim. A wielder of a hatchet sounds a lot more intimidating to me than one who watches chickens hatch. While hatch has been in Ireland since the 17th century, MacIsaac doesn't list Hatcher as a traditional Irish name. Lastly, a search of traditional Scottish and Welsh names failed to find Hatcher in either place. Looking closer to home, the family has been in the South since early in the 17th century. William Hatcher, known as William the Immigrant by some genealogists, acquired several hundred acres of Virginia farmland in 1637, so Hatcher is a genuine antebellum family. Number 6, Welch. As I've mentioned a few times here on the Vanntage Point, it's nice to have a request for a name that's in my family tree. I'm related by marriage to the Welch family of Claiborne County, Tennessee. I don't have it in my blood, but I'm married into that family. They've been in this part of the state since Robert Welch arrived in the region from North Carolina in the late 1700s. Looking further back into the history of the Welch family, we find one of the worst insults that the Anglo-Saxons perpetrated on the conquered inhabitants of Great Britain. They called the conquered masses the Welos, which means the foreigner, on their own island. It's from that word that we get Wales and Welsh. Welch is derived from Walsh, which is in turn derived from Welshman. It doesn't appear among the traditional names of Scotland or Ireland, so I'm confident that Welch is a Celtic name from England or Wales. Well, folks, that's about all I have for you today. If you'd like to get a copy of the list of surnames that I've covered so far, including their publication dates, send me an email to vantagepoint22@gmail.com and I will email you the list. I hope you enjoyed the discussion today and will join me here again on the Vantage Point. God bless you and yours. Bye-bye.